Hello, hello, hello. How are you all doing on this lovely Saturday? Let me see. I see Jocelyn. Hello. Super excited to talk about our February sign of the month. Hello.
Hey, Jamise, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I can't, my little stand is not working. I had it all set this way, but that was weird. I just, so
Take your time.
I may be hand holding. We'll see.
Take your time. Go ahead and take your time and get set up, and we'll let folks come on in.
Okay, let me see if I can, let's see what I can do here. Hold on.
Sure thing. Hello, everyone. Come on in. We're just getting set up. If you have any questions, remember to put them down in the question box. And we're just getting set up. I feel like I should elevate mine a little bit too, but I don't want to mess it up.
What have I done? Seriously. Huh. I'll try something else. Hold on.
Sure, no problem. Take your time. I was having issues earlier.
I thought ready.
It's always something. Okay, that was a little bit better. Hi, Jane. So I hope you guys had the chance to read My Monticello. Even if you did not, we're not going to give away any spoilers, but it is a fantastic book, and I highly recommend that you put it on your... Oh, no, I'm not pouring up any wine for this conversation. That's on Spines and Vines. I'll probably do in a couple of weeks. Catch me over there, and we'll be back on schedule. Hey, Shelly. So just to let you guys know, today we're talking to Jocelyn Nicole Johnson about My Monticello, which was our February Spine of the Month. Perfect read for a Black History Month. Absolutely perfect. I've read it twice now, maybe 3 times. I listened to the audiobook. So Jocelyn, welcome. Hey, Reggie. Welcome to Diverse Spines.
Thank you so much for having me. I thought I was all set up. I had to reconfigure, but such is life.
No problem. You know, when we're doing virtual space, you never know what's going to happen. I'm so happy I got the opportunity to talk to you 3 months ago when My Monticello came out, and now we're talking for the Diverse Spines crew, so they can ask their questions and just learn about your fantastic book. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. And the world is rough.
Yes, the world is very rough.
So it's always this balance of like, what do you attend to, trying to pay attention to the world, also your smaller community, also yourself and your family. So I'm all...
Yes, I totally agree. I think I woke up and I was kind of like, gosh, I feel so heavy. And, you kind of want to get up and ready for the conversation, but you're right. There's a lot going on in the world. So it does definitely weighs on you for sure.
Yeah. And it's this book that My Monticello, I was thinking about a lot of heavy things in this book, and but also hopefully just having so much fun with the characters, enjoying them and building them. And so
Yes. So let's talk about that. I'm not going to keep you long. I told our audience that if they haven't read it, I put a link down there if you need to purchase the book, but we're not going to give away any spoilers, but we are just going to talk about it. I'm super thrilled that it's our February book because it is just a fantastic read. First, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
yeah, so I live here in Charlottesville, Virginia, born and raised in Virginia, but my parents, my brother, my older brother, all my aunties, uncles, grandparents were in South Carolina. So I kind of grew up with this kind of driving home to South Carolina 10 hours and then driving back home to Virginia. I'm like the one Virginia person in my family. So that's a big part of me. And then public school teaching. I love visual arts. I taught visual arts in public schools here for about 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of side writing, really that, that whole time, just love writing, love making. And this was the first book that I made that was published. So just last year.
So first book that you made that was published, and I read, and we talked about this, and we kind of chuckled about it, that you said you were a late bloomer because you published at 50.
Yes, except for I would say I wasn't a late bloomer. I was late to get blooms. In other words, on it the whole.
Absolutely. Like, correction. Thank you for correcting me on that. You're absolutely right. So let's talk about your publishing journey to get you to My Monticello.
Yeah. So, I was writing from the time I was a little kid. I went to like a young writer workshop at University of Virginia when I was 16, which, I didn't live here in Charlottesville, but I kind of drove up here and did that. My parents were very nice. They drove me. But I really started thinking seriously about writing in about 2000. Mm-hmm. My now husband and I saved up all this money and we traveled around for a full year. We went to India, we went to Brazil, we went all these places.
Oh, that's amazing.
It was really cool. And then I had a blog back then and it got me really into writing and him into photography. So when I got back, really thinking about being a writer more seriously, trying to have a sense of audience. And I kind of just went from there, did workshops, found an agent kind of before I was ready, submitted something, it didn't go out, taught art full time, had a child, did all the things.
Right.
And then this book was kind of my third big try with an agent. I just started writing and, once I got that, the nice thing is once I got that sense of what I wanted to do, I kind of was like, well, I have nothing to lose. What's the worst that can happen?
Right.
Might not. And oh, well, I'm going to write what I want to write.
And I've talked about like your imagination and how did you come up on what you knew that you wanted to do? Because if you guys haven't read it, you have 5 novellas and then a short story at the end.
Opposite. 5 short stories and novellas.
5 short stories, right, and novella at the end. Opposite. And so how did you come up on these? Because we're going to talk about a couple of them, but how did you come to these stories?
Just bit by bit, piece by piece. Several, maybe all, but definitely the first story and the last
mm-hmm.
were very related to actual happenings here in Charlottesville. Things that happened in the world that just sat badly with me, that bothered me, that irked me, that concerned me. We were talking about how the world is you see things that happen in the world and then how do you respond to them? When it touches you deeply or when it's in your community or when you relate to the person who's being treated badly or when it feels directed at you, how do you respond?
Mm-hmm.
There's many ways one way to respond and there's no perfect way to respond. But so for me, it was a lot of trying to figure out how I could respond to some violence against a Black university student, the United States, which is this white supremacist rally that came here. How do I respond to these? And I really kind of came to some of the stories by thinking I'm going to respond in fiction, a place where I can make decisions, where I can be in control of some of the things, where I can contradictions that I see, the difficulty of response, the heartache of response, and so forth. So that was a lot of it.
So there's a comment in the comment section. Reggie Reed says that control Negro is something. And so that, we've had this conversation. Control Negro probably is my favorite. It is absolutely, it blew my mind to the point where when I got to the end, I'm like, okay, did I just really read what I thought, And if you guys haven't listened, the audiobook version of this book is amazing. And LeVar Burton narrates the Control Negro. And
I love that.
Because, I don't think I knew that until I just started playing the audiobook. And when I heard his voice, I was like, oh, this is very dynamic. And so let's talk about Control Negro, because this is book club. So we're supposed to be talking about the book. And I want to talk about Control Negro. I'm going to let you just dive in and tell the folks what it is about.
Gosh. Okay. So story too. He really likes that story. Control Negro is, I call it a Frankenstein-like story about a Black professor who is testing America's promise towards Black Americans by having a secret experiment where he kind of takes his own son and compares him against ACMs, average American Caucasian males, and tries to see, can his son, if his son is perfect enough, if the right conditions are not too great, not too terrible, if he could he garner America's promise of life, liberty, and happiness too. And it's a story also about violence to the father, you know, actual violence, and then just this kind of homelessness, you know, that he experienced, where he's kind of separated from his country, really, and from men, and how that kind of perverts his sense of self, and how he's, you know, and his relationship with his son. I don't know, does that get at it?
Well, I mean, okay, so like you said, how he's treated himself, because he's a professor, but he's often mistaken as a janitor. And I think it's like he observed the Caucasian males in his classroom, and then these are the things that he taught his son, the places that he put his son, so that it would be the same as the Caucasian males that he saw every day. And so he's doing this experiment to see if he's going to be treated the same way, because technically he's doing the exact same thing as the ACMs. The only difference is that the color of his skin.
Yeah, so his son's like a scientific control in a sense, right? He's like the experiment of privilege. Could it work on his son too if the conditions are the same?
And you're going along. We don't know that it's his son.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's the part that got me towards it. And you don't know that it's his son. He's talking about all these things, and how I constantly was reading and thinking, where did you come up with this? Like, how?
I'm not a person, but somehow I'm not a person. But it's a crazy story, and I think it just came to me really backwards. So part of it was, I wrote the story, as I said, after this violent incident where a university student was kind of bloodied by officers right along this strip that's super crowded, where all these drunk students go out every Friday night, and it's just this very festive scene. And there was a video of this event where the student was bloodied, he's on the ground, and you can just see these like white drunk students walking behind him, and like it's just such a contrast, right? And his question to the camera was like, but I go to UK, why is this happening? And in that question you hear both, I know why this is happening, and also a heartache that couldn't it have been different, or I thought it might be different, or I hoped it might be different. And so that was a big part of the story. But then also, and I said this in the book notes in Best American Short Stories, because that story was in there. Mm-hmm. A long time ago, someone sent me a white friend in college sent me this article, or told me about this experiment she'd read about, where a professor compared Black people to other immigrant groups, and basically said, but this group also was treated bad and they've done better, and this group has been treated bad and they've done better in different ways. Mm-hmm. Obviously you can't recreate chattel slavery for whatever, but so therefore the problem, you know, the supposition was that the problem must be with Black people. And then the punchline was, and it was a Black person paper. That's where I got of, I don't know, something about the professor, I think, came out of that memory from so long ago. It just had, you know, just like this incident of violence towards a student stuck with me, that stuck with me too.
Right.
Saying that, and also trying to say, but if a Black person says it, I don't know, there was just something so messed up about it, that it just stuck with me all this time and came out in the story.
I think too, like in that story, because if you're thinking anyone who, I mean, specifically when you have a Black son, and I'm not saying not the same for daughters, but when you have a Black son, you're thinking of these instances and the encounters, because this professor actually wants, the part of his experiment that I was kind of like, oh my God, no, he's not doing that. He's calling the police. and you see how they react. And so it brings to mind to me, most recently, the fight in the mall between the blacks and the white kid, and how the white student kid was treated, sat down on the couch, and the black student was, and I thought about Control Negro, because you set it up so where that they are all the same. They're all in this, typical college kids, drinking, having a good time. They're all rowdy and doing the same thing. But the only one that is attacked is the black student, his son.
Absolutely. And I think that was heartbreaking, that mall thing, just because the
Yeah.
kid was young also. But part of the title is about this idea of control. Like, you have to have such control in the world to survive an encounter possibly with the wrong person of authority as a black person.
Right.
That's asked of from this professor, that's asked of the son, that's asked of, it's just obviously not a balanced thing,
Yeah.
playing with that idea too.
So you all, if you don't have the book, like you've got to read or hear Control Negro. I highly recommend, and listen to it more than once. Definitely. It's a dynamic story. I'm like, okay, what is she thinking about? Like, are you drinking wine while you're writing this story?
Maybe.
Maybe definitely after. So let's talk about, because I'm thinking November is when we talked, and now we are 3 months later, and we're talking about like how things are. Everything's feeling really heavy. And I was going through my notes and reading again, and let me tell you, the one that hit me a different way this time was buying a house ahead of apocalypse.
Oh, okay.
I mean, just given the state of the world. And so can you talk about this buying list?
Yeah, so that story is probably the closest to my own like way of being in the world. First of all, I think I told you this, I'm like a list maker. I
Yes.
went to my parents' basement and I went upstairs and my mom had like a list of all the things. Like, I inherited this. She had a list on the back of an envelope of all the things she was going to do. So the story is in the form of a list. It's this
Yeah.
mom, she's, it's like bullet points of things she wants to buy a house. She wants to buy a house before she turns 40. She wants a house for her grown daughter who's an art student, like this safe place in the world. She wants to be part of, not necessarily the American dream, but just the dream of owning something, of having,
Mm-hmm.
but then also she's pretty sure the world is falling, which, I wrote that story before the pandemic. I wrote it in 2019. And I already had that feeling, right? Like, how do you, when you think of when you buy a house, it's supposed to be an investment. It's supposed to appreciate and value. It's supposed to be this place where you put wealth and have safety. And then, like, what happens? How do you plan for that if you don't think things are going to appreciate, if you don't think the world will be safe, if you don't know, if the grocery stores will be open tomorrow, which
Right.
ironically is what happened.
Is what happened, or full, what you need. Exactly.
Yeah. And so she's like basically planning, what she needs to do to kind of get this house and get a deal, because she doesn't have a ton of money, but she's also planning, like, how she's gonna, like, what her survivalist hairstyle is going to be, and how she's going to keep the hordes of roaming
Yes.
away from her door, protect herself, and how she's going to have a well. It's just like this list of all my fears, basically.
I mean, literally, I'm going to show, if people can see, it's literally, the story is told in list form, which in itself is just amazing. One of the things that on the list is says, vote, but don't expect it to save you. March, but don't expect it to save you. Pray, but don't expect it to save you. I highlighted that because I thought it was so deep, but it made me feel so sad.
I know. I'm working on a new project, and I'm trying to think. In this book, I imagined a lot of apocalypse. A lot of apocalypse, and I'm trying to imagine solution. Like,
yes,
imagine like what could change things so profoundly that we could be in a better place. Like, how can some of these forces that have made people feel so vulnerable, how could they be used to make people feel buffeted and feel connected and feel cared for, and to help take better care of our planet, and so forth and so on.
right. Before we go into some more, I want to know what what was the hardest thing to write in this book?
Probably probably the novella, My Monticello. Last piece of the book. It's the last quote. It's the biggest thing in the book. Partly because it's longer, and I had to really develop a middle. I kind of tend towards short things. A lot of the stories are just super short, and
Mm-hmm.
I was teaching full time when I wrote this collection, so I had to think in little bursts. I didn't have weeks and weeks to sit there and just think every day on something, except for in the summers. And even then, not really. So the novella was hard. Plus, to do with really thinking deeply about August 12th here in Charlotte
Yeah.
was the Unite the Right rally that I told you about. But also then going back, I kind of tie it back to the founding fathers. So it's like going back through just like this catalog of violence and hope and racism and community, just going back and back and back and back. And that's just some heavy stuff to contemplate. And putting it on this new character, this young woman, and having her she's just stressed.
So it's set in the future. Let's, since you said that was the hardest to write, which I would imagine it would be. I would think between Control Negro and that one. And then, yeah, it came from the Charlottesville Unite the Right rally. They set fire to a mostly Black neighborhood. And so let's talk. So it's set in the future. And I thought, once again, like your mind is incredible because I'm thinking they are fleeing the fire and take refuge in Monticello. And just talk this, the imagery of that in itself, a place, so talk about Monticello and how they take over. And she has a white boyfriend, Denisha, right?
Mm-hmm. Denisha.
Okay. Denisha. And she's leading, this Black woman is leading the neighborhood, leading the folks in the neighborhood to Monticello where they're seeking refuge.
Yeah, so the connection was kind of came for me from going to a bunch of events after August 12th, like in the year afterward. I was still like, what do I do? What do I do with this? What do I do with this experience? And I was teaching full time, and I was going to all these events about the history of Charlottesville, the history of Black Charlottesville. There was just a bunch of community events available. And so I went to one event where a descendant of Jefferson and Sally Hemings, who I've since met, is stood up, and I saw her, and that was the connection. Seeing this person here who was connected to Thomas and Sally Hemings, Monticello in this very intimate way, at an event that was kind of at the anniversary of August 12th, this really violent event. So I don't know how it came to me altogether, but I love this idea because I love this part of the idea. I love the idea that they go to Monticello. So you have this young woman who is a descendant of Thomas Jefferson and Sally Hemings, and she lives in town. She goes to the University of Virginia. She's been a docent. She's been intern up at Monticello before. She knows her connection to it, but it's a fraught connection, right? So she hasn't really reckoned with it. She lives. Her grandmother is like her dear caretaker still. And in this unraveling, right? So I'm thinking again about the environment. I'm thinking about our social infrastructure breaking apart. You have this moment of unraveling, and this is near future, right? So it's like the future, like
not future.
The future is very recognizable to us, right?
Yes.
Fires out west, you have flooding, you have these storms, and this area has been kind of cut off. And so they go up to Monticello, they ride up in this jaunt bus, which are these buses we have all over town. So everyone in Charlottesville is like, the jaunt buses. They know. And it's like this very dark tour of Charlottesville because they're driving past these landmarks we know, going up to Thomas Jefferson's Monticello, and they're just driving out of town. And she kind of says she went there by muscle memory, right? She goes to this place she knows. And it's like this homegoing in this really weird way because it's a place that's out of town enough to feel safe. It's on a hill, right? It's like a fortress. It's like this place, and museum, and that these neighbors kind of very reluctantly, slowly, they start off at the Welcome Pavilion, they like kind of slowly end up moving into the refuge of the house. And so it goes from just being refuges there to starting to claim the spaces, and they make a decision that they're going to use what they need to survive. survive in that space.
And I think the whole time you can tell you definitely are very strong art imagery. I mean, it all comes through because I'm thinking as you're moving them through, she's a descendant of Sally Hemings, and you're moving them away from, the rally, where their neighborhood's been burned down. They're running from that, and they're running to seek refuge in a place where enslaved people were.
Yeah. So that enslaved people, where enslaved people worked, where enslaved people lived and died, where enslaved people built.
Yes.
People built, right?
Yes.
And so, yeah. So, I mean, I was thinking about American history and who claims it, and how, if not this descendant, I mean, literally our hero, our heroine, descendant of Thomas Jefferson, the person who designed Monticello, who had a great mind in a lot of ways, who conceived of some ideas that a lot of people hold valuable, but also of the Hemings family, who
Yes.
built that and
yes,
served and created wealth for him to be able to have that space and to maintain it, and to maintain this really comfortable life that he had, a long and comfortable life. So if not her, who should be able to claim that space now? Right.
I like how they're moving through the space, and kind of the symbolism of it. They're just kind of going through, they're touching things that they normally wouldn't be able to touch, and it's so dynamic. It really is. I can't get enough of that one. And so what has been, because I know you're doing I saw you doing some speaking engagements, and you're doing them, in Virginia. And so what has been the response? Because, it's people hold it near and dear to their heart. But what has been the response to you, writing these stories? Even Virginia is not your home. Another great story.
So I was really nervous. I mean, when I published Control Negro, I was real nervous. And then I was really super, I mean, anyone who probably has this feeling, but I felt like literally ready for the death threats.
Right, yeah.
Because I'm taking something that is a symbol for a lot of people of one view of America, and I'm turning it a little bit on its edge and saying, could it also be a symbol for this? Or how can it be a symbol for this? Or shouldn't it be a symbol for this also? Mm-hmm. And while some people might love that can be very threatening to people. And so I have been very happily surprised to not get, cross my fingers, I hope I'm not, but not to really get a trolling as just a woman writer, as a Black writer, just in the world, and especially on social media. That's a risk that you take, but
right.
That's been the response so far. And I feel like at least in Charlottesville, it's been a very kind of warm, there's something really exciting about someone taking these landmarks that and putting them in something. So people have been pretty excited about it. And I was really concerned and thought a lot about real descendants, not just of Sally Hemings, but all the other descendants of families that have worked at Monticello. And so far, the people that I have heard from have been supportive of the book, which is great because, I'm fictionalizing something that people have all kinds of feelings about and family experiences with. I want it to be respectful to them and so forth.
But you're fictionalizing like things that are actually happening in the world and making our thoughts and feelings valid. I definitely felt that in Control Negro. I mean, I can't stop there. I know I'm talking about that a lot, but I mean, I definitely felt that you're making our feelings very valid. And we've talked about this before, like with my son, I'll say, cut your hair and wear this and wear that. And it's like, no matter how you dress them up to look like or make them appealing to other people, it doesn't matter because they're still Black. You know what I mean?
And it's its own injury, right? So, of course, people feel all kinds of ways about whatever, but I think there is a tendency as a parent, even if you're not trying to make them like a white child, there is a tendency to try to protect and to control what you can about your child.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely.
It may not be dressed like this, but it may be, don't go, I told you not to go there. for a young woman, there's so many things we do around, their expression of their sexuality or even their,
Yes. Oh my
right?
goodness. Mm-hmm.
All kinds of things that as parents we can do. And it's its own kind of injury. Subtext of this idea of freedom in all the stories. What is freedom? Who gets to have freedom? What does freedom look like? When does your freedom infringe on others? How I think for me as a Black American and as a woman, how my freedom has to fit around other people's. And sometimes I feel like the conception of freedom plows over my existence, my body, my desires, my hopes, my feeling of safety. And so I think that comes into the stories, right?
Yeah.
That comes in there, like the freedom to not be burdened with the weight of violence
Yes.
for your child is a huge one, right?
Very huge. Absolutely. Let's talk about, because as you're, Virginia is not your home. Let's talk about that because I mean I'm a stone's throw from Virginia. I went to high school in Virginia, and the title alone. Just talk a little bit about what you were thinking when you're writing, and just tell us what this story is about. It's one of
Yeah.
my favorites.
Virginia's Not Your Home. That used to be the title of the whole collection. And then I kind of think of that as like the thesis of the collection.
Okay.
Can it be, what is it like when home isn't entirely home? What are the ways in which I feel at home in Virginia, and what are the ways in which I don't? And then My Monticello is kind of the answer in a way, like this claiming, this reclamation, this idea of it's mine and then it's ours, right? There's a column in it. It's ours. Who's ours? Who's but Virginia's Not Our Home it's a totally different voice. It's this kind of second person voice, this young woman telling herself kind of the story of her life and kind of thinking about wanting to escape. So it's really a story about, like, to me, about ambition. She wants to change her name. Her name's
Yeah.
Virginia. Go to France. She wants to kind of be free of the small town she's in. She is biracial and she doesn't feel like she fits in her town. And she just strives and strives and strives, but she just can't get away from Virginia. It keeps pulling her back. She keeps coming back to it. And then hopefully there's this kind of peace and this kind of circularness, of being back home. And it was a little bit about refugees,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
thinking about Europe and, all these brown and Black refugees coming into Europe and how that looked and how every place is changing and how we're dealing with these changes. And to me, it circles back to climate change again. Like
It
when
does.
places are devastated and war happens, conflict happens, people are on the move, we fight more, and it just creates misery on top of misery. And so
People are displaced. Yes. Absolutely.
not easy to handle,
Right.
but I'm thinking about that.
So you said Virginia is Not Your Home was the title. So how did you get from there to My Monticello?
So that was kind of the working title of the whole collection. And then again, I wrote My Monticello last. It was the last thing I wrote. So when I got to that, I had an agent by then, and she was reading and we were talking about stories to include. And she's like, what about if you make
Okay.
My Monticello? How do you feel about that? And I was like, I don't hate it. And then I was like, I really like it. I liked it because it wasn't it felt like the answer to the thing, like My Monticello. It raised all these questions, like who's saying My Monticello? Who would say? I already think it belonged to.
Yes.
Because I live in Charlottesville, I've been to Monticello. I certainly was not going there. My Monticello, that was not my experience of it. And so it felt a little bit defiant to even say those words or put those words together, but put them in the mouth of someone who had reason to say them, and then thinking about my country, my space. How can these be mine too? How can they be ours instead of something I'm supposed to be outside of?
I love that. Instead of something you're supposed to be outside of. I love that. Oh, definitely. Um, so let's talk about people. If you do not know this, you should know this by now. It's going to be a Netflix series.
Movie.
Movie.
So,
It's going to be a movie. I mean, how awesome is that?
I'm so
I mean, you say You wrote a book at 50, and then the book that you write at 50 is going to be a Netflix movie. I mean, it does not get any better than that. And what an inspiration. Like, you can never give up. So is there anything you can tell us? When can we expect the movie?
I'm hoping, so I'm super excited. The book just got nominated for the LA Times Book Award. And LA, they have all these awards in different categories, but it just got nominated for one. So I'm going to get to go to LA. They're going to fly the award thing, and I'm going to meet with all my Netflix people. And so I'm hoping I'll get more scoop. But right now, the last that I have checked in on it is the screenwriter, Brian Parker, who lives in Brooklyn, who I have gotten to meet because he's come up to Monticello to see it, and we've talked on the phone a bunch of times. So I checked in with him at the beginning of the year, and he had written kind of the draft of the screenplay and was asking, like, what about this? What do you think about this? What do you think about this? And kind of brainstorming about, what would Nasia do this? Would you, and what's really neat about it is he kind of has these like shorthands that he made up, like he calls the white supremacists the blues. So they wear these blue armbands, and like that's from him. But I think it's kind of wonderful, right? So you have a person living in the world that you made up and creating new ways of looking at it. These little, I don't know. I just think that's kind of cool. So
I literally can't wait to see who's cast.
I know. That's what I want to know. Director and casting.
I cannot wait for that. I'm so excited about this, just to see it on screen. It's going to be great. Definitely.
I'm excited too. Oh, nice.
Yes, Denny's Bryce. Hi, Denny Bryce. She's in here. So can you tell me or tell us so we can prepare? Like, if you can share what you're working on or what's next?
Yeah, so I have a couple smaller things, but I have a new, bigger project that I'm working on. I'm actually, I have a 2-book deal with my publisher, so I am under contract to write another book. So that's why I'm like not doing as much stuff out in the world for publicity, because I'm really getting that writer space, which is not just having an hour or 2 or 3. It's about like you have to kind of clear out your mind of the world and kind of create another world in that space. So I'm working on that. And this bigger project, like I said before, it's kind of, I can't say a lot about the details because they're still forming, but kind of trying to imagine how people could use some of the things that make us so crazy making, some of the ways in which we are compelled to rise up and do things that I think are harmful. How could you harness that to have people rise up to do things that are good, or to quietly do things that are good, or how could we do that? That's just really interesting to me, and it's helping me, especially in terms of social stability and climate change, right? Those are 2 things that are near and dear to heart. So that's what I'm thinking about in this new collection, kind of creating some weirdo heroes, outsider people.
So giving us some solutions.
Having them fix things.
You said that you are not doing too much outside. So about your writing process and writing space, how do you create, what works for you? How do you write in the morning, you write in the evening, or how do you create your space, your creative space?
Yeah, so I listen to a lot of smart people who are writers because I was not full-time writer before, I didn't really have working full-time. And most people, it feels like, do it first, right? You do the exercise first if you're going to go do it, because the day will get away. But that's what I've been doing. I like spend the mornings after I still have to get my teenager to school and do a couple. Once the dogs fall asleep, I'm on my computer. It's quiet. I've cleared out the room so it's not a hot mess. Have my list over to the side, and I just work. I try to work then and really try to get some ideas down. And then the nice thing is, I think once you get in that space, at least for me, I start to just get ideas all the time. Like I'll just be like, what if this, you're thinking on it. Your subconscious mind does a lot. So you kind of ask yourself a question, what could happen? Or who is this person? And as your day goes along, you're kind of, I don't know if other writers are like this, but, or if there's writers out there that are like this, but you kind of fold in all things that are happening in your real day. So get in a fender bender, then that would be on top of mind, and that might show up in some weird way in the story. Or you know, if my neighbor had a tree fall on their roof, which really happened, like
Okay.
that's up in the story, you know, just like
Mhm.
all those are kind of collecting and turning into this fictional world.
Well, your fictional world is absolutely, like I said again, dynamic. I just like the working of your mind for this is incredible. And let me see if we have any questions. I don't think we do. Just to make sure. Okay, good. Um, I've told so many people about this book because I think everyone should read it. It is absolutely stunning, and I hope you get all the prizes that you deserve. I can't wait for the Netflix show to come out. Um, and what are you reading right now, if you're reading?
I am reading. So I just reread Wild Seed by Octavia Butler, which is crazy and wild. I'd read it many years ago, and it's that brain. Wow. Talk about imagination. I read Brian Broom's Punch Me Up to the Gods,
Oh, I still need to read that.
um, which is a memoir that is really inventive and heartbreaking and funny too. He's very funny too. And then I'm reading The Wrong End of the Telescope, which is a Charlottesville writer. He's a professor, I think, here in Charlottesville, Rabia Almadine, and it's about refugees coming from Syria onto one of those Greek islands. Remember, we all hear about that,
Mm-hmm.
but had gone to one of those, and he talks about. I heard him talk about it. A lot of times, if I hear someone talk about them, it gets me excited about it.
Okay.
So that kind of brought me, and he's a Charlottesville person, so I was curious about his view of this, and that's really good too. Um, just to name a few. And then I have all these short story collections that I'm going back and forth between. Skinship, have you read that one yet?
I have not.
About Korean American immigrants and it's beautiful, just beautiful language. Starts with a list.
Okay.
Very first.
I'll put that on my list. um,
Faster.
yeah. Someone asked, you talked about teaching. They want to know, what did you teach and what level?
Absolutely. I taught public school visual arts, most little kids, like the little kids. So at my job in Charlottesville City Schools, I taught like 3-year-old, the
Oh,
pre
yes.
all the way through 4th grade, taught up through middle school. So 20 years of very little kids and India ink and Q-tips and drawing and painting. I used to film my social media just with images of student art. That was like,
That's wonderful.
so I love that job. And I was so happy when one of my students just contacted me like this week and was like, can you recommend me for art reflections? And I was like, oh, this is great.
That's definitely great.
So yeah, so that's what I did.
Well, I thank you so much for spending part of your Saturday with us here at Diverse Spines. We were so thankful for you to come and join us, and I'm glad that we were able to highlight your fantastic book. And I wish you much success.
Thank you so much for having me, and I am so excited that you like the book. It makes me really happy, and yeah, thank you for having me.
All right, take care.
All right, bye
Bye.
everybody.